Okay. Hello out there in Facebook and the world. We are going live in the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth TV show, Powerful Conversations for Living Your Best Life. Hi, everybody. I'm VLYNN HAWKINS, and I am here with our guest, Rita Marsh. And we've had such great conversations over the years, and a lot of it has been around the subject of a whole food, plant-based diet and lifestyle. And little did I know that she has been studying in this area that I am also fascinated with, called neuroscience. And the question that we pose to our audience today is, does neuroscience hold more answers to health than we thought? And I would venture to say, yes, absolutely. Because if you've ever wondered what brain science tells us about our overall health, or if you've ever thought and you were under the assumption that our brain health and the health of the rest of our body, our heart health, our extremities health, our organ health is all separate, we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about how the brain impacts us in a way that actually is reflected in our outer world. So I'm so excited to bring our guest, she calls herself a volunteer at a beautiful nonprofit organization called Davi Nikent. She is actually one of the volunteers that makes things happen there. So I want to welcome Rita Marsh, who's going to be joining us today on the show. Welcome, Rita.
Thank you, VLYNN. It's a pleasure to be here. And actually, I'm one of the founders of Davi Nikent, the Center for Human Flourishing here in Carbondale, Colorado. And that happened back in 2003. So it's been quite a journey.
I'm sure, even where you now have a facility that you're hosting events in and just doing some amazing things in the Carbondale area, right?
Well, we are privileged to be at the 3rd Street Center, which is a center, a building that was a elementary school, and it's been refurbished into spaces for nonprofits and a few for-profit businesses, but it gives us access to conference rooms. And so we're able to host our workshops and events here at 3rd Street Center pre-COVID. and now we're scrambling to take our programs online and reach a broader audience, which I'm thrilled about, and slowly bringing small programs back to the center with limited audience so that we can still have that connection of community that's so important.
Yes, it really is. It's, we think we take it for granted sometimes, the value of community. And for me, community really provides that connection that is family and family-like. And we know that even that is medicine. A lot of what we do, a lot of what I talk about is using food as medicine, but there are so many aspects to life, including community, that is also medicine for our lives. So as we're getting started here, please tell our audience just a little bit about your journey to becoming such an avid health advocate and one of the founders of the Center for Flourishing, Davi Nikent.
Well, thank you. Well, it's been quite a journey. I grew up in Ontario, Canada, and was privileged to grow up in a very small village on a lake, and really was immersed in nature, and I'm realizing now that that environment really gave me a basis of looking at health holistically. I didn't realize it at the time, but now it's become hugely important to me to understand that connection. I went to nursing school in Toronto, Canada, and first started out of nursing school in OBGYN and was in the birthing room for 2 years, and now realizing what a privilege that was to see new lives come onto the planet and to understand when you first look into the eyes of a newborn, there's a whole universe in that being. And then life happens to that being. And especially, if there are incidences of trauma, it changes that person's being, impacting the brain, the whole beingness of the person. And so I'm realizing a lot of our work now is recovering that essence of ourselves that is an innate healer and can create health and well-being. So that was, going from that place to my understandings now, it's pretty amazing. I came to Aspen, Colorado in 1965 to ski, and through circumstances I stayed and met my husband, and we have 2 daughters that have grown up here, and they're so fortunate to have the experience of nature and the outdoors living here in the Rocky Mountains. So that's been significant. But through my nursing career, I've done many things. I was an emergency nurse, and after seeing so many incidences of trauma where people were making poor decisions and ending up in terrible situations, I decided I would switch careers and see if I could be more impactful in helping people come into understanding health and well-being and how important that was for them. So I went to the University of Colorado and became a nurse practitioner. And somewhere in there, I also hooked up with energy medicine and became a healing touch practitioner. And I began to understand the larger aspect. I'm not just this physical being, but I have a beingness around me that's an energy field. And if trauma happens in my body, I soon found out that it's the energy field that was impacted first. And somewhere in there, I got interested in psychoneuroimmunology. And that was leading into this whole life study of neuroscience and understanding how the mind, brain, body connection works. And there's so much being revealed around that. It's a field that's expanded and expanded and expanded. And I think people, even the general public, is beginning to understand how our thoughts affect our health and can run the show unless you have a practice that brings you into quiet, like a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, and you can shut down the programs that are running here and connect into the essence, which I call the healer within.
That is beautiful. And I love that. I want to first take a moment and just give a heartfelt shout out to all of the nurses and doctors and first responders who are out there right now as we continue to move through this time of pandemic. We're still in it. You know, when we first entered this time frame, I don't think anyone was predicting that a year later, practically, we would still be in it. And actually more than a year, if you think about the time that it took to escalate to get to where things started happening, and, you know, the numbers were there, and, you know, the loss. And, you know, our hearts go out to everyone who has been impacted by this COVID-19 pandemic. And just, you know, we want to continue to pray and hold the space for all of our care workers and first responders who are every day impacted by what's going on with this pandemic. So thank you for that. Thank you for your service as a nurse. I know how valuable that is for me. I want to say probably my first real experience with a nurse was when I was hospitalized with kidney stones. And I just, you know, you take for granted the fact that, you know, the hospital's there, the nurses are there, the doctors seem to get all of the attention. But this little nurse came into my room and was doing whatever it was she was supposed to be doing. And she said, "Do you mind if I ask you something? What did you eat yesterday? Or even yesterday and today?" And the bulk of what I had eaten was all dairy, cereal and muffins, and, you know, not thinking a second thought about it. And she said, "I want to just put this in your ear. Take a look at what you've been eating, and you might want to eliminate dairy because it can be a cause of kidney stones." I was like, "Psh, that's just a word. Eliminate, it's done." And no sooner than I did that, I have not had a bout with kidney stones since. And that was 45 years ago, 40 years ago. But nurses are so important in our society, and we look at them a lot of times as those beings who are supposed to be there. They're supposed to do whatever it is that they do versus really appreciating them. So I want to say thank you. And thank you as the embodiment of all nurses who have come before and those who will come after, because it's an important call in service. And you know, moving to your space of, and I loved how you put this, recovering the essence of ourselves, because we're understanding this new and techie but not so techie piece of neuroscience. And there's a name for it, and I want to kind of break the name down to, you called it psychonet immunology.
Psychoneuroimmunology.
Psychoneuroimmunology. So take a moment real quick for me and break it down, the psycho, the neuro, and the immunology, because I think it's important to see all three in order to really understand how they go together.
This, I think one of the premier persons I ran into, Dr. Candace Pert, and her book, Molecules of Emotion, kind of took me in on this path of understanding that psycho, our thoughts, our brain function, is intricately involved with the neural system of our body, all the nerves that innervate all the organs of the body. And there's a significant impact on the immune system through this network. And so our thoughts can travel through the body, and with these, what are called neuropeptides, juices of well-being, or they can be juices of mal-being, delivered to the organs in the body. That's the network that psychoneuroimmunology now is a science that lets us understand functioning of the body that I think Eastern medicine, the Chinese medicine, understood for years. And Western medicine, through this science, has begun to be able to accept that, because there's been research done and double-blind studies to show and to validate this connection.
Wow. And I think we've heard over time, thoughts are things, and be careful what you speak, because if you speak those thoughts, you're actually calling them into manifestation. But a lot of times you don't even have to speak them for them to become manifested. And there's you talked about energy medicine and the fact that, our thoughts create an energetic flow within us that then permeates out of us, that impacts what is outside of us and what it is that we attract to ourselves. So, as we look at this, what's been your biggest awakening or learning around this science?
Well, I think my understanding is that, and I'll just take this to how I was able to switch from eating the standard American diet and go into plant-based whole food lifestyle. I knew about the benefits of eating healthfully. I mean, I grew up that way. We had garden, we ate from the ground where I grew up, but over my lifetime, that all went away, and I've struggled with weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, weight loss for many, many years. And then I worked with a gentleman, Dr. Paige Bailey, who had a program called Recovery. And Paige, he wasn't a medical person, but he had a great understanding of neuroscience. And he developed a course that people, through studying information that created a brain shape, would actually change the physical body. And this program was focused on people with chronic pain. So I understood, if you develop an information cache in your brain, it actually changes the shape of the brain and the way the neurons are connected, and it changes also into the body and creates a physical change. So our organization is supporting Dr. Greg Feinsinger, who's a local physician who's dedicated his life now to help people move out of chronic conditions and to prevent chronic conditions through plant-based whole food lifestyle. So working with Greg, supporting his programs, I heard his presentation several times, and on January 6th, I think 5 years ago, I had an epiphany. And that was January 6th is also Epiphany in the Christian world. But my epiphany was that I can shift my lifestyle and adapt this plant-based eating. And it happened. It was like, I felt this zing through my body. This is it. This is the way to go. I want to stay healthy and well and active, be available for my grandson, who's now 11 years old, and to be able to be active physical part of his life and not carrying around the extra 40 pounds I was carrying. So it was just that understanding of the information came in, the brain shape changed, and bingo. And my premise is always well, not always been, but the premise of the programs we present says that food begins with the ground up. And so I just feel so blessed to have been able to create this for myself and to continue to support Dr. Feinsinger and other people's work who are moving people in this direction of well-being. And I just want to say, VLYNN, in this time of the COVID pandemic, my heart is just breaking for the people who don't have the knowledge or don't have the wherewithal to live this lifestyle and who are so impacted by this virus because they don't have a healthy microbiome to be able to have a level of immunity that will prevent them from getting so critically ill with this virus.
I so share your thinking and your heart on that, which is one of the reasons that the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth TV show was born, because there's not enough voices out there reaching enough people. When I think about the statistics that over half of our American population is obese and suffering from some chronic illness, be it diabetes or heart disease or Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, lupus, any of those issues in our lives, we have come to know, and I wanted to speak to this too, because I'm glad you brought Dr. Feinsinger into this. It has been for me working also with someone that you introduced me to, Peter Goldstein, who is the founder and CEO of Hippocrates Docs, whole food plant-based diet and lifestyle advocacy group, whose medical advisor is Dr. Greg Feinsinger. And one of the things that really struck me was Dr. Feinsinger's adamant view that to take care of the illnesses that we're suffering from, to lose weight permanently, to basically turn around any health issue, using food as our medicine should be our first course of action. And the thing that came to me was we just don't know that. And there aren't enough people who are speaking to that. The millions of doctors that are out there, 90% of them don't know nutrition, the value of nutrition. Many of them are those who are suffering themselves from some of these illnesses. And I want to kind of bring that back to what you were saying too about the reshaping of the brain. And it is by information that the brain is reshaped, that the neural pathways that speak to one another, the subconscious, the superconscious, and the conscious mind actually can have a different conversation. And being certified, me being a fitness professional for 20 years and, of late being certified as a hypnotherapist, and I'm currently working on my clinical, and just knowing how the brain, the head brain, plays into our health and well-being or lack thereof. Tell me how you see the connection of our head brain and the conversations that we have there, that it actually impact our heart and our heart brain and our gut brain, because science is now proving that the heart has a brain, the gut has a brain, and between the three of them, there is a conversation going on.
24 hours every second. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And, we just don't realize the immensity of and the miracle of the human body. And I wish there was more education in schools for children to understand this. And I just to sidetrack, my picked up an anatomy book out of my book, and he started thumbing through this, and he said, yeah, he calls me the Greek name for grandmother. Can I borrow this book? And I said, sure, go ahead. And he, through his own interest, has become quite an expert on the anatomy, and now moving into the physiology of the body. And it just thrills me to death to see he has this curiosity. And I just wish there was a way that we could be delivering more of this information to children, in grade school, middle school. And of course, by the time young people got the understanding of this in high school, they might take better care of themselves. they might make better choices for health and wellness. I don't know, but that's kind of a dream I have that might be possible.
It's a dream I have as well. My grandson at 18 and I were talking this morning as I finished preparing my breakfast and he was preparing his, and I happened to share with him that he'd be interested. He's going to be interested in watching the movie What the Health. He said there's some athletes, there's some young athletes, there's some older athletes, but you'd be interested in hearing what they say about eating eggs and chicken. It's like, it was eye-opening to me, but he kind of, it's funny too, because as the pioneer in our family on this subject matter, family looks at you a little differently when you start changing up and having a different conversation around food. And so there's some shifts going on as part of the ripple that I've created within our family nucleus. And much like yours, it's so exciting to see young people taking that kind of an interest.
Yes, it is. And I just, there was a point I realized if I'm a nurse, a health practitioner, I've got to show up that I have an essence of health and wellness that can attract others to maybe asking about what are you doing, what's happening for you. You have so much energy. How does that happen? So it's benefited me, but I realized that, and as you do too, by all the things that you've done in your life, by showing up as a role model and a possibility. This is possible, follow me, and together we can make a better health for yourself, for your family, for your community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, being that we're in this space and what we're teaching in the way of using food as medicine, and the food that you want to use is the food from the garden, from the ground. And, a lot of the medicines that they're talking about now, they want to claim are plant-based. And I just have to, for myself, question that. It's like going back to the conversation about meat and getting protein from meat. And if, cows and chickens and fish don't have, they don't have within themselves protein, they have to have a source in order to get it in themselves and then pass it on. It's like, why not just go to the source for us as well, which is the garden, it's the ground. And, getting back to this, brain conversation with the heart conversation, with the gut conversation, there seems to me, and I don't want to not answer that, but there seems to me to be a common denominator with them all too, which is food. And
Yes.
so give us your perspective on the conversations. And then, maybe on the back end, talk to us about the food piece as it relates to the three brains.
Whoa, that's a big one. Oh, I just say we have trillions of cells in our body, and each cell is a living entity, and it needs nourishment in order to function appropriately. So the best nourishment that we can get, that many people are understanding, is to eating plants. So from the brain saying, I make this choice to eat plants, and I check in to my heart to say, how does that make me feel? What does that bring me? And my heart says to the brain, that sounds like love delivered in a package. And my heart and brain talk to my gut and say, how about if we do this? Let's see how you feel. And the gut sends feedback after a couple of weeks of eating in this lifestyle to the heart and the brain. And it says, I kind of like this. and so then you've set up an environment to feed those trillions of cells in a way that as organs, they will do the job they need to do and hopefully not get into a dis-ease state. And I guess my curiosity now is to do more studying about the microbiome. I'm following the work of Dr. Zachary Bush and his study on regenerative agriculture and how to change how people are growing food in this country and in different parts of the world, and his understanding of the microbiome and its effect on the immune system. So that's kind of where I'm going in the next few weeks, is to really delve into that so I can begin to articulate that a little more scientifically. As you, VLYNN, I have this now body of understanding, and it doesn't always, because it's here, it doesn't always come out in the words that other people can hear.
Yes, it in itself is a science, but it does come out because I believe that the heart allows the release of the words that are going to be heard. And I have this thing. I grew up and I was the indigo child that no one knew how to handle. And so I was always told to go sit, stop talking, stop asking questions, just go be unheard and unseen. And that took its toll on me. And I spent years asking about what that was all about, trying to understand that versus understanding me. And when Spirit gave me the understanding that that no longer mattered, that what was here mattered, and explore that, much like what you're talking about as far as exploring this other piece. And I think that that is how most people will get into this conversation about using food as medicine, about making nutrition a part of how they think about their daily lives, because you could be meditating, you could be exercising, you could be doing all these great things, but if you're not consuming the fuel that your body really wants and needs to operate optimally, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I think that what you're saying is coming across because it's a heart thing. I know that the heart is the chakra that releases into the vocal cords. And when the heart is married to what the brain is thinking in the way of knowledge, it comes across. And not to um, discount how our gut microbiome plays a part in that, but our gut and I used to say all the time, oh, it's a gut thing. I'm just taking this turn because it's a gut feeling, without recognizing that science is now proving that there is a real gut thing. And the microbiome has a conversation within itself, and then it has a conversation with other aspects of the body. And, when you think of microbiome, it's an ecosystem. And when it's healthy, and what was amazing to me is that the microbiome ecosystem is it's like a whole development of bacteria and stuff that is there to help. It's like they're renting the real estate of our intestinal community and keeping it healthy. And things like antibiotics and the wrong foods will actually cause the healthy stuff to leave this real estate that is so important to us. And I love how you're going to be studying that more in the regenerative agriculture, because that is how we need to see ourselves. And we think of agriculture as those things outside of ourselves, the garden and, the egg farms for whatever, whether it's broccoli or animals, which I would much rather see broccoli and kale in those gardens than other things. And, we're talking about the things that support this healthier conversation. What you are a beautiful woman of, I'm not even going to ask your age, but what do you consume that actually gives you all of this life and vitality that you have?
Well, greens, vegetables, fruit, nuts, lots of water, and just, curious about the combination of foods. And again, Greg Feinsinger and the information that he's provided to the organization that you're working with.
Hippocrates stocks.
The Hippocrates stocks. There's just this whole new understanding about how plants and the combination of plants and fruits and vegetables is so can be packaged in such a way that you don't even think about the meat and the chicken and the pork and the bacon anymore, because you feel so good in your body, and because that's been possible for me. I'm just encouraging other people to do it. And I think when I started into this, I thought, oh, butter, I'll never be able to let that go. Cheese, cheeses, I'll never be able to just leave those aside. But it was possible, and it was possible just like that for me, and I feel so fortunate. And so again, it's information that creates a brain shape that once you move into this, and I know that with Peter's program, the program you work with, Just One Thing for Health, over a 28-day program, you can feel fabulous and not want to look back. And of course, one of the things too that comes to consciousness is that animals, birds, are sentient beings. And so when we take the life of an animal, there's a certain essence in that is lost. And we know that commercial agriculture is taking up so much space on the planet and causing clearing of the Amazon rainforest and other places where that is needed, so necessary for planetary health. We've got to make that shift of understanding that this way of commercially producing animals for food is detriment to the planet. And if you go into it very deeply, it's a detriment to that living being to have its life taken away.
I agree. I think it was in What the Health that one of the presenters was speaking about the animal farming and the fact that they were, the animals themselves were traumatized in the environments that they were in, and that trauma gets into their meat, and then we're consuming that meat with all of that trauma, essence in it. What are we eating? We're thinking we're eating something good, yet we're being deceived. And it's like, you mentioned about the standard American diet. We were led to believe that the standard American diet was something that we could abide by and be healthy from. And it turns out that it is part of now what they're saying is killing us. It's creating all of these diseases. And so I'm encouraging our audience and everyone to share that this is an area that we want to be re-educated around. The big food companies and the big pharma companies really want us to believe the bill of goods that they're trying to sell us, that they've sold us, like they sold us about tobacco many decades ago. That tobacco not only made you look cool and feel cool, but you were cool for smoking tobacco until you started realizing this has an awful smell, and you started seeing your friends losing all their teeth, or having throat cancer and all these other things. And now they've actually flipped the script, and they've started investing in pharmaceuticals, because as these people have gotten ill, they can now spend the money on the drugs that don't necessarily make them well. And we have an innate ability, and I love that you brought this into the trillions of cells in our bodies, send us messages all the time. And what we have learned to do is mute the message versus hearing the message. And we can do that because I believe we don't understand the value of it all. Was there in your life a wake-up call, a trauma that got you to where you said, I need to learn more about this? Or was this more of a calling for you? I'm
I think it
curious.
was, it was that little spark that was started when I grew up in the country on the land, that over the years it became bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was led to go into the arenas of study and of working with people where it just became essential to move in that way. And to go back to the interest in the brain and neuroscience, one of the modalities I've studied is with Dr. David Berceli and trauma release exercises. And Dr. Berceli's work has now been studied by the US military, and it's a set of exercises that sets up the body to go into what our natural tremor response is when we've had a fight or flight incident. The body naturally wants to release through a tremoring process that is just innate in our body. And understanding that we as a society tend to shut down that response and to comfort people when they come across an accident or see someone having this natural response and saying, oh, no, 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 it's okay. Let me cover you up. Let me get you a warm blanket. It's okay. You don't have to shake like that. But really our body wants to do that so that the trauma that has happened can be released. And so that was another understanding of the incredible capacity of our nervous system to hold trauma or to release trauma. And so I encourage you, I can send you the name of somebody who works very closely with Dr. Berselli, and it might be interesting for you to interview this woman, or even Dr. Berselli himself, about his work with the trauma release exercises. So that brings me back to some of the other resources, and I just wanted to bring this today. There's a book, The Brain That Changes Itself, by Dr. Norman Doidge. And that could be a wonderful resource for the listeners here today. It's stories of personal triumph from the frontiers of brain science. And Dr. Doidge is professor of neurology up in Toronto, Canada. And he has another book out about his study of how the brain can change and how that can create a change in the physical and emotional body. And another book that I found is just a treasure is by Sharon Begley, who is a journalist. She's not a neuroscience, but she collected a groundbreaking collaboration between neuroscience and Buddhism, and the work that the Dalai Lama and his associates have done on understanding the potential of the brain to create a difference in the body. So Sharon's book is Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain. And those are just two of the books that popped off my bookshelf this morning as I came to get prepared to have this conversation with you. And I wanted to have those available for the listeners today.
I will make sure that that information is posted below this video so that you'll have that for reference as well. And it's so exciting to always talk to you. There's so much that you have, the wisdom that you have and that you share, and that you bring people together to learn and understand. I know that you've been very instrumental in what Dr. Feinsinger has been able to do at the Third Street Center with his presentations. And he writes a weekly article for the local newspaper. And I know that you guys have for years, up until COVID shut us down, done a twice monthly or monthly potluck, where you have, the group of you actually do the plant-based dishes and you meet and the table's all spread and you go through and you taste the different recipes and what have you. Tell us a little bit about how that got started.
Oh, just seemed to flow out. There were a few of us, Peter Goldstein and Artis Hoffman and myself and Dr. Feinsinger. And Dr. Feinsinger's wife, Kathy, is an amazing cook. And it just was a natural outflow of our discussions around plant-based lifestyle and how can we share that more into the community. Well, let's invite people for potlucks once a month here at the Third Street Center. And so it just seemed a natural outflow of our conversations and our intent to educate more people and to invite them into this way of being.
That is awesome. And if we could do more in other communities around our nation, we may be finding ourselves helping individuals to step onto this journey of wellness and finding out what it really feels like and means to live this whole food, plant-based diet and lifestyle. And with that being said, and the fact that if you're feeding your body healthy foods, the greens and the fruits and vegetables, your brain actually will thank you for all of that, as well as every other piece of you, every other of those trillion plus cells. Rita, tell us one myth that you often hear people who don't understand the work of science and the brain, but you'd like for them to know and possibly help them to say yes to a change in lifestyle.
Well, I think it was something that was thought to be a truth, that the brain can't change. The brain, after you are 23, 24 years old, you're set with this bundle in there and it can't change. Now, maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that started to be an untruth, but I still think that that is running in a lot of people's understanding. And so the fact that the brain can change, it can grow new neural pathways, it can increase its capacity for having dopamine, serotonin, all the good neuropeptides that are necessary to make us feel good, and to feed the body and the organ systems. To me, that is something that still needs to be encouraged, that change is possible, and information can help create that change. And deep down, I think in each person, there has to be a spark that comes in to say, I do love myself. I do love the possibility of being here on the planet some more years. I do look forward to such and such and such. And awakening that zest for life, the zest to live life out healthfully, energetically, and and as an influence for family members, for community members, for your profession. I think it comes down to, how do I love myself, and how am I willing to invest in that so I can be a meaningful contributor on this planet at this time.
That's beautiful. Well said. And again, I so appreciate you bringing that into the conversation, because it does begin with our loving ourselves, and in that space saying, I love myself. I am going to eat the best. And, the myth of it's too expensive to eat good foods, that is such a myth. Every time I go to the farmer's market, I'm like, why wasn't I doing this years ago when I'm spending hundreds of dollars? And thinking too that, it was saving me time when I'm looking at, I can go. So one of the doctors actually in the Just One Thing for Health program, one of the questions that came up for one of the doctors was, if it doesn't cost more in money, it costs more in time. And so I was like, is there a solution? And I was like, I don't have a lot of time. But one of the things that we've realized is that there are food companies that are doing things to help make it easier for us. So you can go to the grocery store and you can get your onions already chopped up and your peppers already chopped up, and you can get your carrots and everything already prepped for you. So that's no longer an excuse. And then you can, the blenders and the juicers and the Instapot and all of the utilities that you can use to help create amazing, quick dishes takes that out of the equation of argument. And, it's like you were saying, and I really appreciate this. It's how much do you value yourself, your brain, your heart, your gut, microbiome, and these are the things that feed all of the rest of you. How much do you value that? And if you value it and you're tired of being sick, consider this lifestyle. You've heard the merits that food has on improving brain function, improving heart function. We know that there are doctors and peer-reviewed studies that have basically shown the impact of a whole food, plant-based diet and lifestyle in reversing even some cancers like prostate cancer.
Prostate cancer, yes. Dr. Gene Ornish was one of the pioneers in that field. And I was privileged to meet him years ago in Aspen when I was working for the Aspen Center for New Medicine. And so introduced to his work, and it took a while for that to really land in my beingness, but I feel so fortunate to have being able to follow his work over the years. And definitely he now has Medicare covering his program, lifestyle program, where people are able to reverse these chronic illnesses.
I believe that he, being the pioneer where health insurance is moving in that direction, they're moving a little more rapidly. Because I think he tells the story of it took 16 years for them to, and this was just one major insurance company, but for them to come to the point where they okayed this connection that you're talking about. And there are some that are allowing doctors to write prescriptions for whole plant foods. And so we're moving in the right direction. It is going slowly. And I think a lot of it too is still that people just are not aware of, if food can be a cause, can it also be a cure? And while the answer is yes, you got to look at the type of foods, because the food that is the poison, that is what leaves toxic residues in your body, is not the same foods that help to clean this out, clean out the toxins, and even in the cleaning, leave all of the good nutrients. I love Dr. Ornish's just background on the value and the high density nutrition that we want to have. And Dr. Furman, Dr. Greger, with Hippocrates docs, we call in the 7 original heroes that include all of them, Dr. Esselstyn, even Dr. T. Colin Campbell, who did one of the earliest studies on the impact of diet and lifestyle and wrote about it in his book, The China Study.
Right.
Yes. And, a lot of the medical professionals who have in fact shifted their thinking and learned more themselves have said that it was that book that opened their mind and opened their hearts and opened their guts.
Yes. And that's with Dr. Feinsinger. That's the book that really grounded him in this work. And I just have to say what he and his wife have done now is to create, with the University of Colorado, a foundation for curriculum for nutrition at the University of Colorado here in Denver, Colorado, at the medical center. And I'm just so thrilled that he's been able to, through his step-by-step and persistence and moving forward, been able to do that because he understood that he didn't get the education when he was in medical school about nutrition and its impact on health and well-being.
So we might have to add a number 8 to that 7 original heroes and add Dr. Feinsinger to that list.
Absolutely.
Because it's amazing. And, you know, we think about it, even Dr. Feinsinger has been doing this work for more than a decade. And, you know, the doctors that we are calling out, Dr. Barnard and others, have been doing this work for multiple decades. So it's not like this diet and lifestyle conversation is all this new information. If we even take it back before that, when you think about it, and we have it in our histories, we have the villages where there was the local medicine person, and they didn't have the pills and the paper prescriptions that they could write a prescription and you could go to the drugstore and get the prescription filled. And they actually used food, they used herbs, they used root medicine and flower medicine. And that is what we're saying that we really want to see movement back towards, because that is the food that is our medicine. That is the food that when we talk about health, wisdom, and wealth, the wisdom is in understanding this and bringing it into ourselves. And the wealth is at the beginning, our health. We're in this health conversation, and flow through wisdom, bring it into our wealth. Our health is our greatest wealth. And when you understand how to improve your health and maintain a healthy lifestyle, you, in my opinion, have actually found the fountain of youth. And we know how much water plays a part in it all. That's part of the food mix. How much of this food do we know is comprised of water? Alkaline vegetables are high concentrates of water. And it's just amazing what can be learned when you open to the learning. And thank you for the books, The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Deutsch, and Sharon Begley's book, Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain. And there are so many others like that. But I think the key that you're trying to bring to us is the fact that your brain plays a part in it, but without the right nutrients, it's hard to change your brain because you're thinking possibly on illness. And with mental illness, with the rise in the numbers of those who are suffering from mental illness, the thing that right now I'm sure is at the bottom of the list of potential solutions is food. And we want to escalate that to a higher level. Did you want to add something to that?
No, it was interesting this morning. There was an item on NPR about the crisis in mental health in young people today, and the lack of resources to reach out to them, especially children who are challenged with disadvantages, children with autism. And we know that nutrition can play a huge role in helping these young people create a better life for themselves. So you're right, VLYNN, nutrition has to be talked about. And we have a sick care system that isn't addressing the whole being, the mental health, the physical health, the dental health. It's all connected, it's all one. And so hopefully out of this crisis of the COVID, we will see a shift in a systematic system of care that takes into consideration all of me, all of you, all of our grandchildren, and and there will be the resources and the understanding that we're working to try to share with others. It's a huge issue, but I think the ship has crashed into this iceberg of COVID, and so many survivors are going to come out of it who will need support, need help, need information, need resources to live healthier. And especially, as you mentioned before, the frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses, the technicians, the paramedics, those people are traumatized, deeply, deeply traumatized. So how can we support them as we come out of this? I thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, absolutely. And on that note, I want to thank you, Rita, for being with us today, for spending this time with us in this conversation. The brain, how it works, how our neural pathways can be set and reset in a healthier way. So appreciate you. Thank you for all the work that you've done to get here and all that is yet to come. And to our audience, I want you to really take away from this conversation the fact that this information is being brought to you to help you to expand your thinking around health, wellness, and bring in the wisdom that can help you to live your best optimal life. And in doing so, we are here to support you on the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth show, as well as throughout the work that we do with Davi Nikent and Hippocrates Docs through the Just One Thing for Health program, which, by the way, you can sign up for free. Go to justonethingforhealth.com, sign up, get your Challenge to Better Health email series. It's free. I highly recommend it. And these are some of the doctors that we've just been talking about who have shared a challenge for you to do one thing in your life, in your health, that can put you on the road or closer to your destination on the road to wellness. I'm VLYNN Hawkins. I'm your host, and it has been such an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. I look forward to seeing you for our next conversation on the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth TV show. And I'm going to say bye for now, and we'll see you again next week.